Risk and responsibility. Creative people in advertising have many responsibilities towards the consumer as well as towards the client. But our main responsibility is to fill the space our clients pay for. Space in magazines and newspapers, on poster sites, and on the television screen. To fill that space as effectively as possible. Now this space here in the Daily Express, this space costs £2,500. And it will cost the same whether your agency buys it or my agency buys it. It costs the same to every advertiser. But the value of that space may vary tremendously because what goes into it affects the return on the money invested. The cost of actually producing an advertisement to fill this space is relatively little. Confronted with a television script or with a copy and layout, a client seldom says to himself, "Can I afford to produce it?" What he does say to himself is, "Can I afford to accept it?" Now, quite often he decides that he can't, and he rejects the agency's recommendations. Now, he may very well be right to do so, but what are his grounds for rejection? Why does he say, "No, start again"? Why, indeed, do any of us say it? Because it isn't only clients who turn things down. Anyone engaged in the business of making advertisements is automatically involved in the process of selection and rejection. And the four of us at this table have probably rejected individually more advertisements, more campaigns than any single client. Now why? On what grounds do we base our decisions? All of us know that in rejecting an advertisement there are very few reasons that can be put forward with absolute certainty of their being right. Of course, all sorts of reasons are put forward and all sorts of words are used to express our reasons. Some of these words are shorter than others. But the one that is most commonly used is the one that we want to examine today. And that word is risk.
Quite frankly, I can't help feeling that for us, in this particular situation, this is just a bit too, well, risky.
Very interesting. But there's an element of risk here that worries me a bit.
It's a risk. Now that's what worries me. Can we afford to take the risk?
Risk, risk, risk. It's always coming up. But what exactly do we mean by risk? Are all the risks we talk about real ones? Are there some risks that perhaps we don't recognize? And to what extent is it possible, or indeed desirable, to eliminate risk? Is risk-taking a necessary part of creative activity? And if it is, how can we equate it with responsibility? Well, let us start to examine the problem by exploring some of the things we do that are most widely thought to represent risk. And let us see how many of them do, in fact, stand up to analysis.
All products are deficient in some respects to some people. They must be, otherwise all people would be equally satisfied with all products. But it's widely believed to be a risk to admit in your advertising that your product has any deficiencies at all. Is this risk a real one? Answer, no, not in every case. First, there's a good deal of evidence that effective communication begins by establishing a mood of agreement between the communicator and his audience. If a product deficiency is already known, therefore, your admission of its existence can create this sense of agreement, can get your audience in a mood of acceptance. Second, if your audience recognizes that you tell the truth about the disadvantages of your product, they will accept far more readily your claims for its advantages. Let's look now and see how one advertiser does both these things.
Come on. Come on. People have been complaining about Heinz ketchup for years.
All right, come on.
When you get down to the end, it's hard to get out of the bottle.
Come on, come on.
Oh, you can make it run out, like other ketchups. You know how. Those other ketchups run right out. Didn't you know they contain more water? And you know how water waters down the taste. Heinz doesn't have all the water other ketchups have. It's one of the reasons you may pay a little more for Heinz. Water's cheap. So next time you have to do this, don't get mad. We could have made Heinz. Thick, rich, ketchupy Heinz watery. Be glad we didn't.
By the end of that commercial, the advertiser has admitted his product efficiency, demonstrated why it is necessary, and then made it justify a premium price. Not bad in just 1 minute.
A campaign has been running for a long time. It has lost its potency. A drastic change has been suggested. This is rejected on the grounds that there is the risk that such a change may upset the present loyal band of consumers. But if it has been proved that the campaign has indeed lost its potency, what are your loyal consumers being loyal to? The product, surely, not the advertising. By switching from advertising that has become impotent to a potent campaign, you are less likely to run the risk of losing present consumers than you are to confirm them in their own good sense in using your product all along, and, of course, pick up new users. A manufacturer competing in a low-interest product field where brand switching is common cannot afford to allow his advertising to become impotent. Here is how Alka-Seltzer jumps out of the laboratory and years of advertising investment and into real life. A big jump, but one that paid off.
No matter what shape your stomach's in. No matter what shape your stomach's in, when it gets out of shape, take Alka-Seltzer. Alka-Seltzer relieves the flutters, calms the nervous feeling, relieves heartburn, relieves the stuffy feeling, and relieves a headache. Better than any other antacid. Better than anything you can get without a prescription. Anything. Alka-Seltzer. It's the best. On any stomach.
The product message hasn't changed, but by presenting it in a new way, Alka-Seltzer forces you to consider it again.
By trying to offend nobody, you may well end up by saying nothing to anybody. Selecting the right audience might mean that you appear positively hostile to the wrong audience. Or should this matter? If you're selling packaged holidays of a special type, is your potential clientele all holiday takers? Obviously not. But the voice of caution says, let's not offend the rest. We may pick up some business there. Now, Horizon ignores both the voice and the rest. Now, the risk here would seem very large. I would assume the vast majority of people who want package tours want to be organized. Be that as it may, the result was a definite image. Any compromise to accommodate or not antagonize the others would have destroyed Horizon's positive identity. I understand that in a year in which the total market has gone up 10%, Horizon's number of customers has gone up 30%. The question really is, how potential were the offended potential consumers?
If I tell you that there are millions of cats in the garden, you will not believe me. You will, however, be led to expect more than two, and that was my objective. We believe that in advertising, that in assessing believability in advertising, it's very important to distinguish between exaggeration and hyperbole. Advertising exaggeration often expects to be accepted without question or without doubt. We say, ours are the finest ball bearings in the world, and we expect people to believe us. But unless we can substantiate and demonstrate that claim, they won't, and very properly so. Advertising hyperbole, on the other hand, does not, from the very outset, expect to be believed in the literal sense. Hyperbole is a method of using conscious, deliberate, and often fantastic overstatement in order to register a much lower degree of residual belief. Not 1,000,000 cats, but perhaps a dozen. To ask, is it believable about hyperbole is therefore meaningless. Let's see how one advertiser has used this technique with great success.
Steel Town, USA.
Stronger than dirt. New Ajax laundry detergent is stronger than dirt.
New Ajax laundry detergent with Ultramarine Plus is stronger than dirt.
This is a dirty job. What do you expect with all those steel mills? Sometimes my husband's socks get so bad, I hate to even put them in the wash. I didn't think any detergent would get them clean. To tell you the truth, I didn't even think Ajax would. But I believe it now. Look, did you ever see socks this white?
Only Ajax has Ultramarine Plus to put white where the dirt was.
Stronger than dirt. New Ajax laundry detergent is stronger than dirt.
Is that believable? Certainly not. Does it communicate a residual belief in the product's efficiency? Undoubtedly.